Have you ever used weaving in your art? Oh my goodness, when I was teaching textile art, I used to teach weaving to my students, and these were fine art students, and the sort of stuff that we produced in those classes was amazing. So welcome to Friday Art with me, Kate Field. I'm an artist, teacher and speaker, passionate about helping you find your creative spirit wherever it might be hiding, and to help you develop your own practice in art and design. And in today's tutorial, I am so excited to introduce weaving. Now, I teach weaving to little tinies. My youngest is 4.5 of my students, and I've taught it at university, and I am teaching it in my adult classes now. It is for everybody. So enough of me waffling on. Let's go. I really have been looking forward to this project and to show you just how exciting textile art can be. I loved teaching A-level textiles. It was such a creative course, and my students produced the most amazing pieces. Now, this is an old sketchbook of mine where I demonstrated how I use all sorts of materials, and particularly dyed fabric, hand dyed fabric, found yarn, found fabric and other bits and pieces to create some really quite exciting pieces. And I'm so looking forward to showing you how you can use these techniques to create your own art. Now, obviously weaving is a craft, and craft has a practical element to it as well. And I will show you how to use your weaving in practical ways. But I really want to express how you can use this technique to create fine art. And we're going to be looking at the work of some of my favourite textile artists and weavers, and I'll put their work up on the screen in a moment. Annie Albers, absolute pioneer of the 20th century, associated with the Bauhaus movement, and she's known for combining traditional weaving techniques and modern abstract designs. And we'll also look at Sheila Hicks, who's a contemporary American artist, really innovative in her use of weaving and fibre in large-scale installations, and she will use all sorts of things like feathers and paper and plastic. And then we'll look at Maggie Ayres, who's a Scottish artist who uses her textiles for and textile art in such imaginative ways, and she explores landscape and memory and emotion, and I love the way she uses weaving. So I hope you are inspired by their work and by what I'm going to show you, and let's get going. So let's take a look at what we're going to need. We're going to have a selection of different types of yarn. Now, yarn comes in so many different forms: acrylic and wool and bamboo and all sorts of other things as well. It doesn't have to be fancy at all. You can use any type of wool, but I will talk about that when we get going. Let's just move those over there. We're going to need some masking tape, some kind of stick, but you could use a pencil as well. That will be fine. I'll show you that in a moment. Bodking needle. This is just a plastic one, and they are so cheap. I think this was 50p, something like that. And you can get a whole collection of them. Bits of cardboard and just bits of fabric, just odd bits of fabric that we're going to be using. But we're going to start by just working out what actually is weaving. And if you are doing this with your children, your grandchildren, this is a really good way to start. And this is how I start teaching to my little ones. So you're going to need 2 pages from a magazine that are contrasting in some way. So it could be, one could just be full of print and one could have colourful patterns on it. I've chosen these because they are more obvious. Now, I teach weaving to 5-year-olds, and I also have taught weaving at university level. So it's a bit endless and quite wonderful. And we're going to start by just the concept of weaving and what this means. So we're going to have the two pieces, and we're just going to tear these into strips. This is going to be very, very easy. And those of you who know about weaving, you could skip forward on this, or you could just join in the fun, because it is fun. I'm doing these strips quite wide, but some of my students, some of my A-level students in particular, they took paper weaving to a new level and did some really quite extraordinary work. It was fabulous. Okay, so I've got my strips of this sort of teal grey colour. I'm just going to put those over there. And then I've got this one here. Let's just turn that one around like that. I'm going to turn these into strips. And we're going to use these to weave and to show the most basic weaving technique, which we will then apply to our yarn. So we're going to do that. I really hope you are well. I've come back from my trip to Canada full of ideas. Oh, can't tell you how exciting it was. Right, what we're going to do, I've bored everybody with my trips to Canada stories. I'm just going to turn these over. Let's just put these ones down. We'll just use four strips, and let's go lift that up a little bit there. There we go. And I'm going to take my contrasting colour and just put it like this. Now, when I am teaching this to my little ones, I will say to them, see this one here? Can you see that it's going over and then under and then over and then under? And it's this kind of repeated pattern, of course, that is weaving. But where it all becomes a little bit magical is when we reverse what we've just done. So again, I'm just going to put that like this. Lift that one up. Pop that one in there. And when we push these together, just very gently, we can see the start of the woven pattern. And like I said, some of my students have done absolutely amazing things just weaving with paper. Really quite extraordinarily creative. So we're just going to do that. I'm just going to do one more, because you're getting this, aren't you? You're understanding this. This is another really good way to teach colour theory. And so I do try to pop in a little bit of colour theory in all of my tutorials. So you could use contrasting colours, you could use different colours on the spectrum, you could use analogous colours, complementary colours, all of those sorts of things. But you can see how this little bit of weaving, how that is looking, which is quite fun. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to take my masking tape and just sort of hold some of it together. Just sort of put a bit there. So just there. Just hold it in place. Then I'm going to trim it up as we flip it over. This just kind of holds it all together so it doesn't all fall apart immediately. Let's just turn that over. And that side is quite interesting as well, isn't it? And this often happens when we turn our work around. We think, oh, actually, prefer it that way. And then this is going to be the back. And so I'm just going to put a piece of tape over there and a piece of tape over there. flip it back again, to get my scissors and just trim that. Like, you don't have to trim it up, but I am actually going to pop this into my sketchbook. I might use these other little bits for collage as well. Let's just put that on there. And yeah, we've got a nice starting point. Now, my weaving and my art often has a narrative and a story. I'm inspired by landscape and people and the environment. Now, these ones were inspired by the colours, especially this one here, of the urban environment, and where you get these sort of splashes of green as nature bursts through. And this one here, this was my more rural piece, and I'm again inspired by the layers of landscape and by the sea, which always kind of tends to feature in a lot of my work. And you can just do the colours that you want and not have any story at all, but I feel that sometimes when we make things a little bit more meaningful, then there is a power to what we do. Now, these techniques look complicated. They're really not. They're very straightforward, but what makes it interesting is the use of colour. And this is where having an understanding of how colour works and how you personally like to use colour is really important. And if you haven't watched any of my previous tutorials where I have explained more about colour, then feel free to do that. But we're going to get going very, very basically with our piece of cardboard. Now, there is a lot of language in textiles, and so I'm going to be introducing you to some new words, or they may be new to you. You may be an expert already, and so you don't need to listen to this. But we need to have a warp thread and a weft thread. Now, your warp thread, and I am going to do this on this piece of cardboard, which is part of my cat food box. It's brilliant. Works brilliant for a loom. This is my loom. A bit of cardboard. I'm going to stick that bit on there. Now, I am warping up my loom. I love textile words. They're just brilliant. You kind of never use them anywhere else. So this is the warp thread. Now, your warp thread needs to be strong. When we weave, because we're going to be weaving this way, you can weave all sorts of things. Your weft thread can be anything, could be paper, could be tissue. It doesn't have to be strong at all, but your warp thread needs to be strong. And when I say strong, it means that you can really tug it and it doesn't break. So just bear that in mind. You can use a more fragile warp thread, but you have to be very, very careful. And if you are beginning, if you're a newbie to this, it's not worth it. It'd be very frustrating when your warp thread breaks, which it will if it's not strong. So all I'm doing is wrapping my warp thread around this very sophisticated piece of cardboard. There we go. Just put it there. And I'm just securing it with some masking tape. I'm going to cut that with my scissors. And that is my loom. Now, this is where our stick comes into play, or a pencil, because we need to create a gap. And for some reason, this is called a shed. No idea why. Not at all. I've tried looking it up. Still don't know. Again, you could use a pencil as well. It's just to give that a little bit of a lift. And that is your loom. There it is. How easy is that? And this is where everything starts to get fun. Now, some people like to weave from the top and work their way down. Some people like to weave from the bottom and work their way up. Some people like to work sideways. There is no rule. you do whatever feels good for you. For me personally, I like to work down. Now, I'm going to be using some purples like this and some turquoisey blue fabric, a bit of leftover yarn that I had from a knitting project, some more fabric, and a little bit of, oh no, I don't want red, a little bit of green. I'm going to be using these colours. I'm going to show you the technique, and then you will then get it, and then you'll be able to do your own thing. Now, unlike knitting, you don't just work with one ball, you work with sections. And I'm going to start off by maybe 2 feet, so about 60 centimetres of my thread. Just going to thread my bodkin needle and put this down here. And we're just going to go under and over. We're going to do the most basic weave. We're not doing anything fancy at all. We're just going to pull that through. Leave a little bit hanging at the end because I quite like that. When we finish, you might want to trim it up, or you might want to leave it. And then we go back the other way, making sure that we are going over and under and over and under in the opposite way to what we did before. And then you pull that up. Now, you need to bunch these up quite tightly, but you need to weave gently. And, oh, my glasses have just fallen off. We need to weave gently, because if you don't, everything all bunches up. Like if I pull it like that, you see it will bunch up. So you want to keep that quite loose. Then use your fingers. Now, obviously, on the market are some very sophisticated looms. You don't need those. You don't need those for this. You really don't. And this is why I just think this is such a wonderful technique to learn. It's also really calming. I taught this at a secondary school. I worked in an inner city secondary school. Boys and girls, and they loved it. And it was really interesting when we got them all starting to weave, with this lovely kind of hush came over the classroom. And I did this very recently in my art group near to where I live. I run a Friday morning art group in Axminster in Devon, and we did weaving, and oh my gosh, it was lovely. And of course, once you kind of get going with it, you don't have to think about it very much. So you can let your imagination go and do a bit of daydreaming, or like we did, you can just have a chat with the people next to you. And I really like that. So you can see I'm just putting up very, very straightforward, very simple design, under and over, under and over. And I'm going to end up on the same side each time, but you don't have to do that. You could have ends on this side or this side. So I'm going to change now. I'm just going to pull that out. Pull that there. I'm just going to leave that to dangle. And I'm going to pick up my piece of fabric. Now, these are ones that I've cut up. This is just scraps. This is absolutely gorgeous bit of velvet, actually, a bit of stretch velvet. Had a little bit left over from a project that I did ages ago, years ago. just going to thread that on. So the fabric needs to be cut into about sort of centimetre, 1/4 of an inch, and again about 60 centimetres, or even just you know, less than that if you've only got a little bit. And we do the same again. Now this stick will kind of flop like that sometimes, so sometimes it is actually better to just lift everything up, stick a pencil in. It does make things easier if you have a little bit of a lift. Yeah, a bit of cardboard would do, a bit of wood, ruler, that would do as well. Now when you're using the fabric, obviously you could have it really wide, but it works better if it's bunched up like that. And I can leave that little bit, I'll leave that bit dangling, and I might come back and trim that at the end. Let's just go back the other way. Now I'm doing the whole of this piece. Let's just pull that through. Just going to turn that over. Now you can see that the warp thread shows, so it is important that you use a warp thread that complements your colours, your colour theme. Obviously it didn't show up in this one because things are very tightly together when you're using yarn, but when you're using fabric it will show. That's going to do, I'm just going to do another 2 rows of this one. Let's come through there. Again, when I'm working with my little ones, very little ones, this is a great way for them to practice their fine motor skills. And I'm just going to go back the other way. And we make things like bookmarks and things like that. And just little wall hangings. So I'm just going to push all of that up together, as you can see. So I've got bits that dangle down there. I'm just going to leave those because I might use those for something else. I might keep them like that. So this is the technique, which I'm sure you're getting. And if you're weaving along with me, I hope you're having fun. So, how are you? What's the weather doing? We are in full autumn now in southwest England, in Dorset, where I live. And it's a bit chilly, which is why I've got my jumper on. But I do love autumn. I love the colours and the freshness of the air. It is really quite lovely. And after I've recorded this tutorial for you, I'm going to go out for a lovely walk. There we go. I love reading your comments, your update on the weather, what you've been up to. I read every single comment. Thank you so much. There we go. If you've got this far and you haven't liked the video, that would be nice. Be very nice. If this is something that you'd like to do and you're not subscribed, then that would be nice as well. It'd be lovely to have you along. So I release tutorials every Monday and Friday, and then on a Wednesday I do Wednesday Wandering, where I wander about stuff relating to art and well-being and all of that kind of thing. I like this yarn. This is why I wanted this little scrap here, because it's such a beautiful colour. How lovely is that? I'm just going to go and do one last one on here. before showing you another little technique. Oh, let's just pull that. See, this is why it's really important to keep these bits quite loose so it doesn't all go in. So I'm just going to put that one to one side while I show you another technique. Now I've started this one, obviously a slightly wider piece of cardboard. I've warped it up exactly the same way, and I've just put in 4 rows exactly as we did on this one. And there are lots of things that you can do, lots of patterns you can create. So on this one, I'm just going to show you a few of them. So we're going to start off as we did before, but I'm just going to go about 2/3 of the way. Pull that like that, just slide that up, and then I'm going to go back again like this. So we're creating a gap here. So I'm going to go back again, just up to where I was before, like this. And this is how we're going to produce these sort of blocks of colour, which again, it can be really, really effective and can look really good. Just holding that down. Oh, bit of collage paper then just appeared. I haven't actually tidied up my workspace since doing a collage yesterday, which is very bad, isn't it? Oh my goodness me. Someone asked me last week, oh, could you do a video of your workspace and how you organise your materials? And I thought, oh my goodness, if I do that, which could be a really good idea, because I am actually quite an organised person, I would have to do a lot of tidying up. So maybe that's a good thing. So I've just got a little end here. I'm just going to finish off with that one. Again, I didn't measure this. I was just going to see where we go. So you can see we've got a block here. Now what I'm going to do is on this bit, I'm going to put some beads. Now, there are so many ways that you can put beads. Obviously, you could thread your beads onto your warp thread, and I will do that in the next one and show you how to do that. But the other thing that you can do is, let me just take is that going to be too fat? Might be too fat. Let's have something a bit thinner. Oh, the other thing I like to do is to combine different colours. That can work really, really well. I might do that. Let me just take a little bit of this one. It's the thing when you're working with yarn, it always manages to get tangled up, doesn't it? Especially if you've got cats. My cats love it when I start to knit and crochet. They kind of seem to sense that I'm going to be sitting down with some nice warm yarn, and they think, yay, yippee. we're gonna snuggle down. Right, now for beads, depending on the yarn and depending on the hole of the bead, you might just be able to thread it through like I can on this one, because these beads, I pick up beads from all over the place, and these just came from an old necklace that I found in a charity shop, and I really liked the colours. They're just plastic beads. Right, I'm going to put 3 beads on. So I've got a drawer, getting back to being organised, of old necklaces that I've used that I'm going to have for my textiles. Now I'm just going to have these 3 here. Now what we're going to do, let me just thread this one into here. So I'm threading the 2 of them together like that. Just pull that like that, and I think I'm going to come in from this side. Now the other nice thing about weaving is that it makes you use both hands. And if you are left-handed or if you are right-handed, it doesn't matter because you're going to use both. Right, I'm just pulling that through until I get these beads. Here we go. A little bit fiddly, but it looks really good, so it's definitely worth doing. Right, here we go. Pop that one in there. So I'm just kind of poking them up through the holes like that. And then what I'm going to do is to go back again. And now I don't think that's going to fit through, is it? But that's what you do. You're going to poke it all the way through. You can see it better with this one, but I'm just going to swap needles because this won't go through. But that's what we're going to do. So we're going to pick them up like that. So I've just threaded it onto that one. I'm going to thread right the way through all of those beads, pulling it through like that, just being a little bit careful. This one is going to be empty. Smooth that little one across a little bit more. And you can just play around with the patterns on this. Again, there's no hard and fast rules. I'm just going to use this needle to go back in, and I'm just going to pick up that one. Just to keep those beads in check. There. Now the other thing that you can do, and I will show you this later, is when we take our weaving off the loom, you can then embellish with more beads or buttons or some embroidery. There's just so many things that you can do. Just get these techniques all done. And you see what's happening there. We've just got a block. Now, I haven't planned this design out in advance. I'm just sort of making it up as I go along because I wanted to show you the techniques. But when I'm doing my larger pieces of weaving, which I do in exactly the same way, and I will quite often just use a piece of cardboard because I can make it the shape that I want and the size that I want. I will plan out a design and think about what colours I'm going to use and think about the blocks. You can see I'm just putting that in like that. Now, this is going to be a good, is that going to stretch across? Yes, it is. Right, let's just see what happens. Right, we're going to go under, over, under, over, under. Now, when we get to this bit, if I was to just continue, it would be same as that green one, which could be fine. Yeah, I'll show you. We can just carry on like that, and that just sort of ties in with that. But I think it would be better if we did a little loop the loop. So we go underneath this one again, like that, and then we can just pick up two together. And again, it just gives a bit of interest. Like I keep saying, there's no kind of rules. Just going to tie these ends up later. So I've just got a little loopy bit there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is a bit of fabric. And this is the velvet that I used last time. And I'm going to weave that bit across and then hold all of that back in. And then I might do a few more little beads. But this fabric will screw up. And I'm just going to try something. I don't know whether it's going to work or not. Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, that's good. So you could put some beads onto a bit of fabric as well. And you know, that's just another thing that you could do. Just playing around with some ideas. I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to spread these beads out just a little bit. Let's see if I have luck with another one. Again, very good for your fine motor skills, which is why I do like doing weaving with young children. And it's also very good for older people. So I work with a dementia group, and we do these sorts of crafts because it's very good just to kind of keep your brain working and to keep your hands working. I'm just going to do that. So you see, as I'm pulling that through, these beads are going to get stuck, so they're going to need a little bit of help. That's okay. I'm just going to lift. Now the other thing that you can do is use a ruler to weave. So I've just, and then it just you can create a gap as you pull that through like that, and then drop that. There. So I'm just leaving those beads. I'm not going to go back through like I did with those ones. It's just a different technique. So we're still continuing going under over under over, but of course you can start to create different sorts of patterns, which I'll do when we go back again, just to show you what it would look like. There we go. I do like this colour combination, this sort of moss green with the purple. Again, complementary colours, opposite sides of the colour wheel. I'm just going to leave that bit dangling, and I'm just going to pick up a bit of this green. Now I can't find the end. Right, here we go. Let's just do a little bit of this. Pop it back onto this needle, making sure you can see that. So we've been going under, over, under, over. We'll go under, over, and then we'll go under 2, over 1, under 2, over 1, under 2, over 1, under 2, over 1, under 2, over 1. We're going to get a different sort of pattern. Let me just pull that there, squish that up. Now when we go back again, there's various ways that you can do this. You can do the exact opposite. So where I've gone under 2, and I'll go over 2. And I'll do that so you can see what that looks like. Just pull that right the way through. Like that. You'll get these wider things, and you'll get the purple of the warp thread coming through. Let's just do another one like in exactly the same way. So under 1, over 1, then under 2, over 1 as we go through. And the lovely thing about weaving is if you've put a line in and you've realised you made a mistake, it's really easy to just pull it through, pull it out and do another one. You see, these are wider now. do that as you keep going. Now, like I said before, I like to work from top down, but so many of my students like to work this way. So I'm just going to turn my work round as we do another line, and then you can work out which way you prefer. Like that. See, I like this texture, like the larger stitches that we have over there. Just going to put there. I think it works really well, gives it a different texture for the piece. You see, I'm just going to turn it back again because that's what I like to do. So we're now beginning to get blocks, and of course you can do all sorts of other things as well. Now the next thing we're going to do is to remove this one from the loom. Now whenever I teach this sort of weaving, this is seen as the scary bit, which is quite funny. It's not really scary at all. So I'm just flipping it over, and what we're going to do is to take our scissors, we're going to lift up this thread, and we're going to cut. Now this bit is important. Just going to turn it around that way. Let's just move that bit out of the way, because you need to be able to secure your warp thread ends. So we're just going to lay them down like that. Let's just, oh, this was very sticky masking tape actually. Just going to lay that like that. And then while that is all flat, we lift it off. And there it is. Now we need to secure the ends, and if we don't, it will just all unravel. Again, lots of different ways of securing the ends and lots of decorative ways. The simplest is to just tie them in pairs, and I can't remember whether I did an even or an odd number. I have got an even number here with a little, that's a short end there. I should have done that a little bit longer, but that's okay. Now you can either take these two and tie them in a knot like that, which I think looks really nice. The other things that many of my students like to do is to tie a knot like that again, and then find a bead and thread the bead onto it as well. I'm not going to do that for this one. So you could do that all the way along, or you could take your two ends and tie them like that into a reef knot, like that, which it would just hang differently. Personally, I don't like that, but it depends, you know, on what else you might want to do with those ends. It's just, so I've just done that one there. I've just left that a little bit looser, because then you could tie another little knot like that. And if you've done macrame before, you could do all sorts of woven patterns and things like that, various knots. But the important thing is that it's secure. Let's just do this little end, and then we'll turn it round and do the other side. Just pull that through like that. I've just done both ends there, and then you can decide what you want to do with these ends. Now you could take your needle and just weave, you know, decide which is the front and the back. So let's just have a look. I think that's the front. This is going to be the back. And I'm just going to weave in, because this bit isn't going to show. Just going to tuck that little bit in there. Like that. So you can see, you can just tidy those bits up. And you can do the same with all of these. You can just tuck them up. You could stitch them, or you can leave them to dangle. So this is going to be the front. I quite like the dangly bits, actually. And then we'll think, well, what am I going to do with it now? Well, let's turn it into a wall hanging, shall we? And now I've lost the other bit that I was looking for. Here we go. Here we go. It's just a bit of driftwood, and I'm just going to attach the ends, I think, with a little bit of, onto a little bit of driftwood. Again, nothing fancy, is it? It's not fancy, it's not sophisticated, but it's actually really quite effective. I'm doing this quite roughly, I'm not measuring it at all. Because then you've got your kind of dangly bits there, and you can just put it however you want. Now, I've had people make these into bookmarks, and I've had and I've done this myself, tidy up all of the ends so it's all kind of like bunched up like that, and then use that as a piece of applique for the front of a book cover or a bag or something like that. So I'm going to go back, let's just move that to this one and just show you one more technique.
Just a quick interruption for my own tutorial about my YouTube membership, Open Studio. If you'd like to come and join, the link is in the description, and I release some content especially for you and a few other bits and pieces as well. And if you'd like to check that out, pop below and I'll see you there.
And I'm using my chunky thread because I think it can look really fun. I'm making that loop again, going under. I'm going to say it all looks a bit of a mess to begin with. And what I'm doing is I'm not going directly across. I'm going to come down in a loop or curve. Again, just to give a little bit more texture and interest to the weave. And again, you can do this in multiple different ways, but I quite like this effect. I think it works very well. It just adds a little bit of interest. Now this piece is kind of turning into a bit of a landscape, which I like. I love kind of where I live in Dorset, beautiful landscape, and I live by the sea as well. As I think I might have mentioned a few times. It's because it's still quite new to me. I've lived in Dorset now for 6 years, and I still am amazed every morning when I look out of the window and I can see the sea out of one way, and if I look out of my studio window where I am now, I can see sheep. I get very excited about this sort of thing. Can you see what's happened here? I've got this loop, this line coming down, which means I've got this triangle gap here, and I've got a gap here as well. Now I could fill that in. I could fill it in with something different. Let's use perhaps some of this purple that I've used for the warp thread. Let's just use some of that. Because it's a real contrast, not only in colour, but in the width of the fabric. I'm just going to go It's a much less chunky fabric, yarn I mean. Let's just put there. I'm going to tuck that bit underneath later, and I think I'm going to go right in like that. And I'm just doing the simple under over, just to bring this space in. It's like colouring in, really, just sort of blocking in the colour. Obviously you can do whatever you like. You could add some beads to this bit. That would look really good. The other thing I like to use is buttons. So I have recently inherited the buttons from my great aunt, which is just lovely. And my cousin asked whether I wanted this old tin of buttons. I think she knew what my answer would be. And I haven't collected them yet. Very much looking forward to that. Opening a tin of vintage buttons. So yeah, that would be really nice. And I have used old buttons, bits of old lace in much of my textile art, because it's just so beautiful, isn't it? Just so beautiful. And you can pick up old tablecloths and napkins. There we go. So you can see what's happening here. I'm just filling in that bit. I'm going to take this bit over. And as in all of my classes, I encourage you to do your own thing. I'm teaching you the techniques. What you then do with these techniques is up to you. It's yours. And I mean, that is one of the things that I absolutely love about being a teacher, is that I love to see what my students do after I've taught them a technique. I'm actually going to bring this back again, just looking at that and thinking maybe I could do another row going back. Now I think what I'm going to do is pick up that. I don't know whether you can see that. I'm going to go in through here. Just that like that. And then I'm going to go back through. Again, it's like doing a chain stitch. Just makes things a little bit chunky. And again, it gives you that interesting shape and interesting texture. I'm doing this slightly awkwardly because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. There we go. And I'm really liking that. And I'm thinking that I will use this piece of fabric, I think, as a book cover. I think I'm going to make a book cover. If you would like a tutorial on making a book cover, then let me know. Let me know in the comments. And write a comment anyway about what you're thinking that you might do with this technique, whether you're going to give it a go, what colours you're going to use, what, if you've done this sort of thing before, you know, share what you've done. Love to hear what you're up to. Obviously, a weather update, really like those. Always, my knowledge of the world's weather has improved dramatically since starting this channel. Right, I'm going to leave that. And I will do something like this, like I've done here, filling in these gaps for another time. But we're going to move on to the final bit, oh, excuse me, which is how we can start to put narrative and storytelling into our work. So this was a piece I did a few years ago. I showed you this earlier. And the colours I used are very deliberate. And it's based on the weather and the stories of the weather and people surviving storms and things like that. So the narrative was quite loose and quite abstract. So I'm just going to move that one bit out of the way a bit. But I was really quite clear in that I wanted to have different types of textures to represent the different types of, the different colours in the sky, the idea of the wind and all of those sorts of things. Now, I'm just going to put an image up of Sheila Hicks's piece, and I really love it. And you can see that she's, along with her weaving, she has done some couching, putting in the sticks and then wrapping yarn around the sticks, again, to create this idea of a story. And as in with all abstract pieces of art, we can make up our own stories of what they might mean. And this one, also by Sheila Hicks, is sort of part of her work and her research into the indigenous weavers and the archaeology sites of the Andes. She did, she had a scholarship to paint in Chile, and some of the work that she's done for that is absolutely amazing. A lot of her work is in the Art Institute of Chicago and various other places all around the world, actually. And if you ever get a chance to see her work, then I really recommend it. But what I really want to stress is that you can incorporate your own narrative and your own interests into your weaving. It doesn't have to be just for some kind of practical use, although it could be. It can be very meaningful. It's obviously entirely up to you how you do your work. So coming back to my sketchbook here again, I'm sort of working out some of my colour themes, some of my ideas. This is just done in a watercolour, and then putting together some of these pieces. And like with this one as well, most of this fabric is either found or it's hand dyed, and I am going to do a tutorial, I think, on how to hand dye little bits of fabric that you can use in your work. I took this one off and tidied up some of the ends, and I think I am going to use it as a piece of applique. This one I'm not sure what I'm going to do with, so I'm just going to think about that one. And that's it for today.
I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I absolutely loved it. It's one of those wonderful things that I kind of forget. I don't do it for a while and then I think, I love doing this. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see some more, you can look at this one or this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.